Okay, so let's continue building our calculator here, and we're going to make an application now. And what I want to end up at is I want to be able to, in my web application, I want to be able to enter my expression, which you can see here, it's just hard-coded, 10 divided by 3. And then I want to be able to hit a button that says compute, and I want to see the result. So that's where I want to end up. So right now, what we have is, again, the expression's hardwired, and I have all this code that we kind of built in the previous video. So if you haven't seen those, go there first. All right, so first thing is, we're not really emitting HTML. And I really want to have this kind of a web page. So at the very bottom, I'm going to close out our PHP, and I'm going to emit an HTML page. So right now, I have all these outputs here. I'm writing different things. It says calculator app. I don't need that anymore up here. I'm probably going to have it written right here. So this is going to be the calculator, and we'll say calculator right here just to make sure we are up and working. This result, output result, is kind of from this renderer. We're going to switch this up. We don't necessarily need to render it like this. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move that inside here. So I have echo this. That's kind of static. Let's just go ahead and put an H1. And this is going to be our calculator. And then under that H1, I'm going to have a call to output with result. So I don't need this in here anymore. Get rid of that. Let's refresh this. It's gonna want to move that around. That's fine. I'm okay with that for now. And let's refresh and see what we get. I get my big H1 tag, and then I get the output. So this video is not about HTML. It's not about CSS. It's not about JavaScript. It's just about really the PHP. So this is going to be an ugly calculator. But what I want is I'm going to have an HTML form that when I post it back, it's going to end up giving me the expression that I want that's up here. We're gonna have to handle this a little bit differently, this exception. So we'll do that when we can. But it's gonna have an input element. And I think the only thing I need here is a name, and it's gonna be the expression. And we'll leave that the same. And it's kind of complaining because I probably don't have the associated label with it. So let's go ahead and put the label in there too. For EXP, and this is gonna be the expression. That, and then I think I have to do the ID of EXP, and you can set the type. The default type is already text, and so we don't really need to set it, but that's fine if you want to set that type. So just like that, and then there will have to be a button. This type of this button is going to be the submit. I believe that's a default type also, but here's my calculate button. So for now, let's go ahead and wire this up. Let's see what we get. All right, so I've got a maybe not so beautiful calculator, but hey, that works for now. And you can see I have a place for my expression. I have a calculate button. I'm still putting this out for now, and that's fine. And maybe we can make that look a little bit better here in a second. Maybe if I put it into maybe its own, like a div of its own, and we'll just move this up into there. All right, so this is going to eventually be the output of the expression and the calculator. So what I know right now is I don't have an expression. And what I want to see is what it does when I actually click the calculate button. So when I click calculate, right now you can see it changed a little bit. It actually posted the form data back, but it did it up here. You can see a question mark exp equals. All right, so let me try that again, but let's put an expression here. Let's put a different one. Let's do 5 plus 3. And then let's hit calculate. And you can see at the very top, it's trying to put exp 5 plus 3. It's escaping the plus because it doesn't like to add pluses in your URL parameters, but that's okay. We can see what it's doing here. It's actually calling the calculator. It's putting this expression, this string, into the query parameters up here. I don't want it in the query parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call method is equal to post. So when it posts it back, it's going to post it back to this same route. And let's try it again. So I'm going to clear this out first of all, and I'm going to put some expression here. 5 plus 3 or 2, hit calculate, and now something happened and it disappeared. Now when I look back and I do the inspection on the network, let's do it together. So I'm going to put 5 plus 3 in there, and I'm going to hit calculate, and you can see it posted back to our server. And so it had request headers and response headers. The payload, you can see this expression at a payload 5+3. So we're getting closer to what we want here. All right, so in order to talk about the next steps here, we have to talk about a concept called superglobals. Now, PHP has this concept, and I'll pull over the manual page here just so you can see it. But here are a bunch of superglobals that are defined. And you can see there's an underscore server, there's an underscore get, underscore post, and we're just going to explore these for a second, and then we're going to use this underscore post because that's really what we need here. So for now, let's go ahead and explore each of these superglobals. And probably the easiest way is just to write some custom code. We're going to exit right here so we don't go to our application, but all we're going to do is dump out all these superglobals. And we're going to create an array, a data array that's going to consist of globals. That's one. Let's see if it got them all. So it automatically tried to make it for me. So I got server, I got get, I got post. Here is files, there's cookie, there's session, here's request. There's session in there twice. I don't know why I did it twice. And then there's a env. So I got all my superglobals into one array. And then what I'm going to do is for each of these, as let's say element D, we are going to stringify. We're going to JSON encode each of these, and then we're going to echo that out. And we're going to echo them out with BR tags. And we'll put multiple BR tags on the end of here so I get a little bit of a spacing. So I'm going to refresh this and let's just see what we get here. All right, so right away we get a little bit of an error, and this has happened because this particular variable, session, isn't necessarily defined. So these variables, these superglobals, aren't necessarily defined all the time. In a more advanced video, we maybe talk about sessions and cookies and stuff like that, but we're not going to look at these for now. They're just not going to be defined probably in our simple application here. So let's see if the rest are there. Okay, so we've dumped these out and it's a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of this content and we're going to put it someplace where maybe we can parse it out and look a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to grab all the way to here. That'll be the first one. So this is the first variable that we have. And what I'm going to do is open up another tab, and I have this JSON formatter, and I'm going to paste it in, and then I'm going to have it reformat the thing for me. And so you can see that this globals variable right here actually contains all of the other variables. So underscore get, underscore cookies, files, everything else that's in the data array, we actually get a copy of it right here. Everything's in there. So we don't have to necessarily look at all the rest. We just have to look at globals to see what we're going to do. We're going to just study these now. In the server, that's right here, I'm going to expand server. In that variable right there, that super global, you can see the host name, which is this number. So that actually corresponds to the name inside my Docker container. You can see the directory for that. There's a lot of other information here in just kind of this server about the actual server itself. So you can see the gateway instance, the IP address, and things like that. So we're going to close server up. We're not going to really use that in this case. The next one is the underscore get, and that one's empty because we didn't do a get request. The next one is underscore post. So if we look at the post superglobal, guess what we're going to find in there? We're going to find our expression 5+3. So it's an array. It's going to have keys with the names of whatever's in our form. So we're going to get it from there. If you look at the next one, underscore files, we didn't have any files in this upload, so it's not there. Next one's underscore request. If we look at the request, you can see that the request has the same data as the underscore post. Now, if there were get data, it'll be included also in the request. So it'll have both post and get data. The underscore env has information about your particular environment. Really what I want to key on is this underscore post. So we're going to get rid of all of this. We talked about the super globals. Those are there for PHP. They're always available to you. You can use them anywhere you want. This exp expression now is going to be the super global post, and I want to be able to write exp like that. And so that's what exp is going to be. So if I run this again, now you can see 5+3 is equal to 8. Now what it didn't do is it didn't put my expression back in here, and I want to fix that. So let's go ahead here. I can type in the value. What is it going to be? We're going to have PHP tags, and I want it to actually output or echo EXP. And then I put that just like that. So this will fill in this expression now. So there's my 5 plus 3. So now I can get rid of a little bit of this. At the very bottom, when I do my output, I don't have to write expression anymore. I can write maybe the result, colon, because the expression is just going to be inside of whatever my expression is. So now I can do my multiplication, calculate it. I can do my subtraction, I calculate it. So all of that is right there right now, and the result is being computed for me. And so to clean up my output, I no longer need access to my EXP. I just need the access to the operator. Just to review the code that we have now is I have this post, which is going to be a problem for me if I don't have the post data. So right now, for example, if I refresh this page without doing post, it's going to say, well, that array key doesn't exist. And so what I want to be able to do is set that here. So for example, if I can check if the array key exists, that's a function that's inside of PHP. If the EXP key exists in underscore post, then what I'm going to do, this is a ternary operator, I'm going to set EXP equal to whatever that value is. Otherwise, we're going to set it equal to just an empty space. Let's see if we get an error here with our empty string. Probably will, because my parse expression, right? It's going to try to parse it, and it's going to say an invalid expression. This no longer is part of my HTML, and I want to make that part of my HTML. So maybe what I have to do is have a variable here is valid, and I can set it equal to true. If I get into this case, I'm going to set is valid equal to false. I'm not going to exit out early. But what I'm going to do down here is I'm going to have maybe under my form, I'm going to have an optional. So depending on if that's there or not. So I'll say PHP if is valid. I'm going to close this. I can put like a div in here, say an invalid expression. And then now I can close that out. So this is a way that I can conditionally add element tags to my HTML. So I have this expression PHP if this is valid. In fact, I want to change this. If it's not valid, then I put this div into the HTML. So if I hit refresh again, let's see what we get now. Undefined variables, num1, num2, an operator. Let's see. So one of the other things now I have to guard against, because before I would just exit early and never ran compute. These variables no longer exist. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to add this up into my catch. If I didn't throw an exception, I'll end up here and I'm going to compute the result. Out here, maybe I'm going to put result. Let's start off with maybe unknown. If I compute it, it'll be the number. Otherwise, and I'll be able to display it down here. Otherwise, I'm going to display this. Let's see what we got here. It must be float. That's right. So result must be null or float. So I can't do that. I have to have a null here. Refresh. So incrementally, we are getting closer to what we want. I kind of feel like what I want here is an else. I can add that here and put my other bit right there. And so if it's an invalid expression, I'll say invalid expression. Let's do that. Otherwise, it's going to print this. And I can make this a little visually less complex like that. What I really would like to see is if it's an invalid expression, I would like this to show me kind of its red. And I'm not going to go into CSS or styles too deep, but what I want to do is I'm just going to set the color to red, just like that. And that'll make that text red. You can see that's invalid expression. Now I will add one more style since I just added it. I'm going to go ahead and maybe on the form, we're going to add maybe a little bit of margin on the bottom side of that form because everything's jammed up in there. Maybe say 24 pixels, just a random number. Let's just push that stuff down a little bit. And so now you can see it's pushed down. So let's run this calculator. So I have this bit of code. This is just a fancy if, else, end. So this is a fancy kind of when you do it in markup. So if this expression's true, which means it's not valid, and then I'll put this div in there with the red colored invalid expression. Otherwise, I'm going to put this code in here, which is going to have my output, my result. Let's see if this all works. So if I put a valid expression here, like 2, maybe plus 3, enter, has a result of 5. If I say to times 3, calculate, it's 6. I say 100 divided by 4, I get a result 25. 100, what I haven't done, subtraction, 96. So our calculator is working. It's getting closer and closer. There are times when maybe, what if I left a space out? I'm back to invalid expression. You see how that works? So maybe I don't necessarily have to explode on spaces. When I go back to my part up here where I'm going to parse the expression, let's go look at that code again. So the original implementation, I exploded on the space. Maybe the smarter thing is to explode on my operands. So here's my list of operands that I support. And for each of these operands, I'm going to try to explode based on the operand, the expression. And if I get the 3 parts, I'm just going to return those 3 parts just like that. So let's try this and see if this code works. There are some problems here, and we'll try to fix those in a little bit if we have time. But I'm going to recalculate this. 10 minus 4. It said invalid expression. Now the reason why it's saying invalid expression is when we explode this on the parts. So what I'm going to get is if I have, for example, 100 minus 4. When I explode this, I'm going to get an array. It's going to be 100 comma 4. So it's not really what I was expecting. Now what I'm going to get is I'm going to get 2 numbers here. And so what I want to return is this kind of thing where it says parts 1. I'm going to return the first number. I'm going to return whatever the operand is as a middle one. And then I'm going to return the last one here like that. So this should fix this because now I'm going to return an array of 3 things in the order that I think that we should do. So let's go ahead and calculate this again. And now I get the 96 back. If I put spaces in here, this should still work. Let's see. And it does. If I put even more spaces, I don't know why somebody would do that. It still works. So everything's still functioning the way we want. So I think this is a little bit better way to parse. So now I don't have to necessarily type in those spaces. I can just type in the operand. So it's probably a little cleaner, a little bit better there. So I'm glad we refactored. That's what that's called. So when we go back and we change code that's already exists, we're refactoring. One of the things that I don't really like is that I have this list of operands out here. And I feel like, where else are we using operands? We're using them over in the calculator. So here, these are the operands that we're kind of using. And I feel like at some point, maybe there should be this global variable that says, hey, these are the supported operands. I know how I would do it in object-oriented programming, but this functional space, maybe what I have to do over here is I'm going to have a function. Maybe this is supported operands or operators like that. Return an array. And then I would return what I had over there. So let's see if it'll help me type it. If I can start it, plus, minus, multiply, and divide. And then in my expression parser, I can call supported operators. Let's see if that works. I may have to have an include. Okay, so this works, and the reason this still works is because in my index, my master file, the first one that runs, I've actually included the expression parser, I've included the calculator and the renderer before any code ever works or functions. So you can think of these as inlining all of those functions. So they exist in this code. And so when I call things later on, for example, in my expression parser, I'm calling this function, it doesn't have to reload it, or I don't have to include it or require it. It just works. So that's probably a little bit cleaner. And the reason that's a little bit cleaner is this expression parser shouldn't really know what operands my calculator supports. My calculator is the thing that should know what those are. Over here I have this calculator function, and yeah, it now has a supported operators function that it'll return the supported operands just like that. All right, so let's take a more final pass through this code. I think we're in a pretty good spot right now If I just refresh this page without any expression at all, so there's no expression, I will get an invalid expression. That's the case when I feed in an empty or a blank string and I try to parse it. I'm going to move that comment down to here. That's more appropriate, I think. So inside my try catch, I try to parse and then I try to compute. If I get any kind of exception in here because I couldn't parse it or I couldn't compute it, I'm going to set the isValid flag to false. If that thing is false, it's going to come down here. If it's not valid, so if it's false, not means it's true, and then I'll put that little invalid expression. If I do have a valid expression, like maybe, I don't know, 74 divided by 3, let's see what that computes to. I calculate it, I get 24.666. That's a valid expression, and I'm going to show the output or the result here. So in this one particular file, I have a mix of PHP code and markup. Inside the markup, I have additional PHP tags where I'm either echoing out, or I have some PHP tags that have some conditional logic where I can optionally include certain HTML elements in my page. So is this a production-worthy application? At this point, I would say no. It doesn't really do a lot yet, but there maybe are still some avenues where I might want to lock this down a little bit and clean this up a little bit more. In particular, I'm just really not a fan of all of this functional programming, and it certainly is a way to get things done and accomplish it. One of the challenges that I have with functional programming is, we have, for example, here's a compute method, and this compute method takes two parameters and an operator. But at some point, maybe I have something else in my application that needs a compute method. Now that compute method right now is global. And so if I have these two things that need this compute method, pretty soon in this functional programming world, they start to clash. So in a different video series, I'm going to cover PHP object-oriented programming, and that's where you want to go to kind of learn how to deal with those issues. And also we'll clean this up a little bit.